I am 96 years old, and I've spent the last 53 years holding a secret that would have burned my house down if I had let it. Everyone in Chicago knew my husband, Clarence, as a good man, a deacon, a coach, the pillar of the community. But 4 weeks ago, a 59-year-old man named Curtis knocked on my front door. He has my husband's eyes, my husband's smile, and a shoebox full of letters that prove I wasn't just a wife. I was a shift worker in a 36-year lie. I've lived in this house on Langley Avenue for 75 years. Same kitchen, same window, same silence. But that silence was a choice I made back in 1971, a choice that turned me into a stranger to my own flesh and blood. My children grew up thinking their father was a saint and their mother was a stone. I'm telling the story now because time is the only thing I'm running out of. I spent half a century being the villain in my children's eyes to protect a man who didn't actually exist. I thought I knew the extent of Clarence's betrayal, but I was about to learn that the man I shared a bed with had a talent for deception that went far deeper than a second family. I opened my door to a stranger, but before he even spoke, I realized he wasn't just a reminder of the past. He was the evidence that my 53 years of silence had been for absolutely nothing. I'm sharing this now because at 96, I've realized that secrets don't protect people. They just bury the truth until there's no one left to hear it. Before I tell you what I did that night in 1971, the choice that turned my own children against me, I want to thank this channel for giving an old woman a voice. If you believe that the truth, no matter how late it comes, is worth telling, please subscribe and join this family. Like this video if you've ever had to be strong when you were breaking inside, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading them. It's been a long time since I've had someone to talk to. Now, let me tell you about the photograph in Clarence's pocket. Clarence Davis was the kind of man people pointed to at church picnics. Now that's a good man, they'd say. He was the most handsome deacon at Mount Zion Baptist, a man who worked 31 years at Wisconsin Steel and came home smelling like fire and metal every single night. We got married in June of 1949. I was 21. And back then, you believed that love was a foundation you could build a whole world on. We moved into this house on Langley and filled it with 4 children, Robert, Denise, Sharon, and Michael. It was a 2-bedroom house, tight and loud, but we made it work because we were young and supposedly in love. But I've learned something in 96 years. Love without honesty is just a pretty room with no floor. Clarence was good to those children. He coached Little League. He never missed a Sunday service. He was charming and generous, everyone's favorite neighbor. But the people everyone loves are often the ones with the most to eyes. Hide? They have so much love to give because they're spreading it in places they have no business being. By 1970, the air in this house began to change, a subtle shift that only a wife can feel, like a storm brewing just over the horizon. I started noticing the deacon meetings were getting longer and the Saturday morning errands were becoming a ritual until one Tuesday evening, I decided to do something I promised I'd never do. It was October 1971. Sharon was at the kitchen table making a Diana Ross Halloween costume, humming along to the radio. Clarence was supposedly at the church. I am not a fool. I have never been a fool. When the man you love starts smelling like a different kind of home, you don't need a detective to tell you the truth. I went through his jacket pockets. 22 years of marriage and I had never felt the need to spy. But that night, my hand hit something cold and flat. It was a photograph. A little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, standing in front of a brick building I didn't recognize. On the back, in Clarence's unmistakable cursive, It said, Curtis, age 6, April 1971. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a plate. I just sat down across from my daughter and her glittery wig and looked at that little boy's face. I realized in that heartbeat that my 22-year marriage was a carefully constructed calculation. I was the Southside wife, and somewhere else, there was another woman playing the same role. I sat in the dark for 3 hours waiting for his headlights to hit the driveway, rehearsing a speech I hoped I'd never have to give. When the door finally opened at 11:30 p.m., I didn't say a word. I just held the photo up into the light, and I watched the good man of Langley Avenue physically collapse before my eyes. He didn't even try to deny it. That's what hurt the most, the immediate surrender. Her name was Vera Simmons. She lived on the west side, over on Pulaski Road. He'd been seeing her since 1964. Curtis was born in 1965. For 7 years, my husband had been living a double life 20 minutes across town, oscillating between two families like he was working double shifts at the mill. Pearl, let me explain, he whispered. I told him he had exactly one chance to tell the truth, or I would destroy everything he spent his life building. He cried. He got on his knees on this very linoleum floor and begged for his life. He told me he loved us both, as if that made the lie any easier to swallow. Now you're probably thinking, Pearl, why didn't you pack your bags? But you have to understand, 1971, I was 43 with 4 children. I had no job, no money of my own, and a house in his name. In our community, if I left him, they wouldn't have blamed Clarence. They would have blamed me. I had a choice. I could be a righteous woman and lose everything, or I could become a warden and keep my family together at the cost of my soul. I looked at my husband on his knees and I gave him my terms, but I had no idea that the peace I was buying was actually a prison sentence for the next 36 years. My terms were simple and cold. He was to sign the house over to me. He was to put $200 every month into an account only I could touch. And he was never to see that woman or that boy again. If he failed, I told him I'd stand up in Mount Zion on Sunday morning and tell the whole congregation exactly what kind of pillar was holding up their church. He agreed. He promised. And for a while, I believed I had won. But that night changed me. I became hard. I became a woman who watched the clock, who checked the mileage on the car, who scrutinized every penny. I stopped being a wife and started being a guard. My children felt the shift. The warmth left this house. I was so terrified that if I blinked, the lie would crack again. So I ran that household like a military operation. I was the one who said no. I was the one who disciplined. I was the one who never smiled. I was absorbing all the bitterness of his betrayal so my children could keep their perfect father, never realizing they were beginning to hate me for it. One afternoon, my son Robert looked me in the eye and said the words that have haunted me for decades. Daddy is the only reason we are a family. Mama, why are you so mean? That was the irony of it all. To keep their world from falling apart, I had to become the bad guy. Clarence was easy. He was the fun parent because he was making up for his guilt. He bought the gifts, he cracked the jokes, and he played the hero while I did the heavy lifting of keeping a roof over their heads and a secret in my chest. Denise was 19 when she finally snapped at me. She asked me what had happened to me, why I was so cold. I wanted to scream. I wanted to show her the bank book and the photo of the boy on Pulaski Road. I wanted to tell her that I was the one holding the walls up while her father was busy knocking them down. But I stayed silent. I thought I was being a martyr. I thought my silence was a gift to my children. I let them love a lie because I thought the truth would break them. I didn't realize that the lie was breaking me, and in the process, it was pushing my children further and further away. I lived like that for 36 more years, watching Clarence play the part of the devoted husband while I waited for the other shoe to drop. Clarence died in 2007, and as I sat in the front row of his standing room only funeral, I realized that even in death, he had one last secret waiting to be unearthed. I let my own children look at me with resentment for 53 years, just so they could keep their hero. I chose to be the mother they disliked, rather than the mother who broke their hearts with the truth. But being the villain is a lonely path, and it's a burden no one should carry alone. If you're listening to this and you understand the weight of a silent sacrifice, or if you believe that an old woman's truth finally deserves to be heard, please subscribe to this channel. Your support is the only company I have in this quiet house on Langley Avenue. Like this video to help my voice reach those who are still trapped in their own secrets, and leave a comment below. I want to know, have you ever protected someone who didn't deserve it? I'm reading every word you write. Now stay with me, because when Clarence died in 2007, I thought the secrets were buried with him. I was wrong. 400 people came to say goodbye to good old Clarence. The pastor called him a saint. My children wept for the loss of their hero. I sat there in my black dress and I didn't shed a single tear. Denise whispered to me that it was okay to cry, but I had used up all my tears in 1971. After he was gone, my children drifted. They moved to Milwaukee, Atlanta, Houston. They called on Sundays out of obligation, but the conversations were hollow. I was left alone in this big house with 75 years of memories and a heavy heart. Then, 4 weeks ago, Curtis showed up. He didn't come for money. He came for answers. And as we sat at this table, he started pulling out the contents of that shoebox. Photos of Clarence at Curtis's graduation. Photos of Clarence at Curtis's wedding. My husband hadn't just seen them. He had been a father to that boy for the entire 36 years he promised he wouldn't. But it wasn't the photos that broke me. It was a letter Clarence wrote just 1 year before he died. A letter that proved he knew exactly what he was doing to me. I read the words he wrote to his secret son, and for the first time in 96 years, I realized that my husband hadn't just led a double life. He had spent 36 years laughing at the pact I thought I had used to control him. In that letter, Clarence called himself a coward. He wrote, "Pearl deserved the truth, but I was too weak to give it to her." He was right, but I was the one who allowed the cowardice to define my life. When Curtis left, I called Denise. I told her to come over. I told her everything. The look on her face when the 5 3-year-old wall finally came down, it wasn't what I expected. She didn't fall apart. She reached across this table and she held my hands. "Mama," she said, "I told you Daddy was the good one. I said that to your face. Why didn't you tell us?" And I told her the only honest thing I had left. I wanted you to have a father, even if it cost you a mother. Robert called from Milwaukee the next day to apologize for 40 years of resentment. Sharon cried for an hour. Michael is still processing, but for the first time in 75 years, the air in this house on Langley Avenue is clear. I'm not the warden anymore. I'm not the villain. I'm just Mama. I wasted 5 decades waiting for a man to do the right thing, only to realize the power to be free was in my voice the whole time. If you're holding on to a secret to protect someone you love, ask yourself if it's worth the price of your own soul. I'm 96 years old, and I'm finally living my first honest month. Don't wait as long as I did. I spent 75 years on Langley Avenue. Most of that time, I was a woman defined by what I couldn't say. I stayed silent to save a family that was already breaking, and I became a stranger to my own children just to keep a dead man's memory alive. But today I am not Clarence's secret keeper. I am not the mean one. I am just Pearl. And at 96, I finally learned that the truth doesn't just set you free, it gives you back the people you love. If my story moved you, or if it reminded you that it's never too late to reclaim your own life, please subscribe and stay a part of this community. This channel gave me a voice when I thought I'd go to my grave in silence. By liking this video and sharing it, you're helping ensure that stories like mine, the ones hidden in the shadows of good families, are finally brought into the light. And please, talk to me in the comments. Tell me if you've ever had to find the courage to speak up after a lifetime of silence. I'm sitting right here in my kitchen, and I'm finally ready to listen. Thank you for being here with me. It's been a long wait, but I'm finally home.